Hello everyone. Tonight, I'll be narrating 3 new creepyposts that I found off of the Let's Not Meet subreddit. After you've heard these stories, let me know what you think of them in the comments below. You be the judge. But without further ado, let's dive straight into their experiences.
These are their stories.
This happened on a Sunday night when I was about 10 years old in the mid-90s. My family house was on a short street, a dead end created by a railroad track. We had a 3-story house, which was the farthest from the tracks, with windows on every floor, 2 in the basement. The stairs from our bedrooms upstairs led directly to the front door, which connected to a closed-in mudroom/porch, which also had a screen door and a glass door that only locked from the inside. Even friends and extended family would wait outside to be let into the porch, as that's where the doorbell was. From inside the porch, you could see right up the stairs through the window in the door. Across the house, parallel to the front door, was the back door. Both had a large window in them. It must have been June because my older brother had a soccer game, and I only had a week of school left. I personally found watching him struggle on the field and being forced to cheer while being eaten by bugs really boring, and I just gotten a box set of books I desperately wanted to be alone with. After about an hour of reasoning and pleading, I finally convinced my parents to let me stay at home alone for the first time while they went to the game. They were only going to be gone for a few hours, and although we didn't live in the best neighborhood, our neighbors were close family friends. I'd be fine. Mistake. Usually before a game we'd all go out and eat together, but since I was staying home, they ordered a pizza from down the street, my brother's favorite. I'd already been face deep in the first book for half an hour when the doorbell rang. Pizza. I walked out from my bedroom and down the stairs to my living room. I got to the bottom of the stairs, and my father was at the door having a conversation with the delivery guy. They were talking about soccer, so I just decided to take the pizzas and keep on keeping on. Which is when I noticed the delivery guy staring at me, intently. He was a middle-aged Caucasian with an accent, and he was smiling at me in a way I recognized. It was the same smile I had on my face when I told my parents I was old enough to spend the evening in the house alone. Fake, but convincing. I walked past him through the living room to the kitchen and threw the pizzas on the counter and shoved my face into my book. My father talked to him for a few more minutes about sports, and then closed the door. My family sat down to eat and chat while I forgot all about them, the food, and the delivery guy. Before they left, around 6:30 p.m., my parents wrote down all the emergency numbers, gave me instructions not to open the door, and headed out with my brother, and I waved them off, excited to finally have the house to myself, if only to read in silence. I locked the main door and headed up to my room to read. It was blissfully quiet, save for the sound of my dog's occasional barking in the backyard. I had just finished the first book, and immediately started on the next when the doorbell rang, and my dog lost it in the backyard. I was up in my bed immediately. I looked at my alarm clock for the first time since they left. It read 8 p.m. My whole family was at the game, and any extended family in the province was as well. No one would be coming over without calling, especially on a Sunday night. The doorbell rang again, and again. I remained frozen in place, my book crumpling in my shaking hands. I, for the first time, was completely alone and terrified. My sly kid smile flashed in my mind. I thought I was so clever convincing my parents I wasn't scared to be alone. And then another smile flashed in my memory. The pizza guy. And then the banging started. Loud successive bangs that rattled me if not the house. And now from the backyard my dog was livid. I could hear him barking and whining at the back door. I wanted to call someone, but the only phone was in the kitchen, which involved walking right past the front door. I panicked. I was scared to leave my room, as my feet would be visible to whomever it was once I entered the hallway. But what if it was just a neighbor? I checked the alarm clock again and was surprised that only minutes had gone by, and my parents wouldn't be back for an hour and a half, minimum. I'd have to wait it out, so I did. I got up as silently as possible and closed my bedroom door. Eventually, all the barking, ringing, and banging stopped. I waited for half an hour, and then opened my door and crept out of my bedroom. I crept down the hallway to the top of the stairs, trying to press myself into the far wall, as out of sight as possible, but all the lights were on, and I realized that it was obvious that someone was home. I peered quickly down the stairs in the window, looking through to the glass porch door, and saw no one. Luckily, no one was there. I tore down the stairs and ran for the back door and checked outside. Nothing but my dog, who was all too happy to run inside. I let him in through a crack and slammed the door after him, locking it, and I realized it had been locked before. I turned to the phone, grabbing it, and about to dial my neighbor's number, when my dog started acting like he was going to the vets. A low growl accompanied by a crouch, backing away. I froze and looked in his direction, then followed his gaze to the window in the inner front door, where inside my porch, past the front screen and glass doors, stood a man I've never seen before, and he was staring at me, livid. I froze, paralyzed with fear as I looked at him, and I couldn't look away. He was tall, slim, and had bags under his eyes. His hair was shoulder length and unkempt. He lifted his hand and placed it on the window, and then looked down, as he tried to turn the knob, twice, but it was locked. I came out of my paralysis the second his eyes left mine, and I moved quickly to the side of the wall that led to the basement stairs. It blocked us from being able to see each other. Hiding felt good. My dog, still in the corner, inched towards me, low to the ground and still growling. I couldn't breathe, my heart was pounding. This couldn't get any worse. Wrong. I saw you, boy. I saw you. Open the door. My stomach nestled in my throat. I started crying. I've never really had a flight or fight moment. Only flight or flight. But there was nowhere to go. Back upstairs led right past him, and going down into the basement seemed even more terrifying, as I'd have to walk past the window in the middle of the staircase that looked out into the alley leading to my backyard. I saw you. You can't hide forever. You have to pay. You have to pay. He screamed through the door window, shaking the door as he pulled on it. I thought he would just break the window and unlock the door, so I descended slowly down to the steps to the basement, going just halfway to put some distance between us. I stood still, waiting, and then silence. For a minute, nothing, and then the sound of the glass door and screen door to the outside opening and slamming. More silence. My dog straightened out, walked over to the top of the stairs, and then looked right past me, and started growling. I can still see you. I see you. I see you, boy, and you have to pay. I jumped and turned my head, and through the window to the alley, I saw his face. He was laying on the ground, staring at me. I see you. I know you're home. I see you. I bolted up the stairs to the inner front door, ripped it open, and then locked the glass door to the porch, and backed up into the living room, closing the main door behind me, locking that too. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, and unplugged it, and turned back around. He was at the door again, this time outside the porch. I steered myself and ran up the stairs with the phone, dog in tow, to my parents' bedroom, which was the only room with a working phone jack and a lock on their door. And then the doorbell started to ring. I closed and locked their door behind me, left their light off, and plugged in the phone. I dialed my neighbors and got their answering machine. I dialed again, no answer. Every ring of the phone was matched by a ring of the doorbell. I called them over and over, finally whispering a message. Tom, it's Kevin. I managed trying to get into the house and I'm alone. I peered out of my parents' window and looked down into the front yard. He was still there, pacing, walking up and down the stairs, looking in the windows, walking out of sight as he entered the alleyway, and then back into the front. I noticed my neighbor's car wasn't there. They weren't even home, and it still hadn't occurred to me to call 911, so I hunkered down and waited for my dog, watching from the corner of the window. He walked back up the porch, tried the door, and then the doorbell went off a few more times. And then he walked down the stairs and headed back out into the street. He walked a bit down the sidewalk away from the dead end, towards the main road, and then stopped, and turned around, walking back towards the house. He stopped again and looked up, directly at the window I was looking through, but the room was dark. He couldn't see me. Instead of turning back around, he continued walking down the street, and crossed the street when he reached the train tracks. He walked back up the other sidewalk, staring at my house all the while, and kept going until he reached the main intersection, and turned the corner. I stood in the corner of the window, watching the street for what seemed like hours, until my parents' car pulled up in front of the house, along with the neighbor's car. They all got out and my mother headed towards the house while my father started chatting with the neighbor's husband. I unlocked the door and booked it downstairs, instantly crying with relief as I unlocked the inner door, and then the glass porch door. I recounted the night's events to my parents in the kitchen through tears, and they had just started to calm me down. And that's when the doorbell rang. I started to shake and cry again, and my father burst out of his seat and barreled towards the door and swung it open. And there he was, the man. He stood there smiling a disgusting smile, and I immediately took off down into the basement. My mother was right behind me. I heard my father and him arguing loudly for a few minutes, and then my father slamming the door. My father called my mother and I back upstairs, and then after I made him promise the man was gone, I walked up into the kitchen. My father sat me down and explained the situation. Earlier, my father hadn't had enough cash on him for the pizzas. He had told the delivery guy that he would be back in 4 hours, but had to make the game and didn't have time to get more cash. The delivery guy agreed, wished my brother good luck in his game, and then had passed the message on to the guy who would be working the closing night shift. The delivery guy had misunderstood, thinking that he was to return immediately and collect payment. He explained it all to my father as if he had rang the doorbell a few times, and then had left. Not that he had been circling the house terrifying me for over an hour. He told my father he wasn't sure if anyone was home, so he looked around back, but only saw my dog, so he left, only returning, coincidentally, minutes after my parents returned, armed with a convincing story. Kids have such an imagination. Sorry that I frightened him. Suffice it to say, but I brought my books with me to every soccer game after that. This happened a couple weeks ago. I'm 17 and my parents were out of state for the month on vacation. I live in a small, nice neighborhood that has quite a distance from any other neighborhoods around us. My neighborhood likes to be involved with each other, so there's always neighborhood summer barbecues and neighborhood parties now and then. Everyone always attends to these, so I'm very familiar with who lives in the neighborhood as I can name off a majority of them. My neighborhood is always dead quiet after 9 p.m. as the kids are inside by then and families are usually heading off to bed. I meant to spray paint art and I decided I wanted to work on a painting in my garage at around 10 p.m. because it was cooler by then. Mind that the garage door is fully open. I'm setting out a tarp so I can start painting when I hear someone walking on the sidewalk. I look up expecting to say hi to a neighbor going on a late night walk around the neighborhood. Instead, it's a man I thought I couldn't recognize at first glance due to it being dark and the only distant light source around was from the garage. He was at least 6'3", lanky, and looked completely normal from what I could see. The man stood at the end of my driveway facing me. With the little light stretching across the driveway hitting his face, I didn't recognize him. I live in a very friendly state where we're usually nice to strangers and make conversations. I thought nothing suspicious as he could have been just a neighbor I wasn't familiar with, so I just struck up a conversation like I usually do. Hi, how's it going? Hi, it's going good so far. Sorry, I don't really recognize you because it's so dark. Oh, I'm Xavier. I don't think I've ever met you before. Did you just move into the neighborhood or something? Yeah. I moved into the corner house up the street. You moved in with the Millers? Yeah, the Millers. I moved in with them. They're my cousins and they're letting me stay with them until I figure some things out. I thought nothing of this, as this seemed normal for a family to let a member of theirs stay with them for a while, and the Millers are just those kind of people. Well, I better get going. I need to finish something. It was nice meeting you, Lainey. I never introduced myself, I think? Oh, the Millers told me all about you. I thought nothing of this as well because I would babysit the Millers' kids frequently and my family is close with them. Xavier kept walking and I thought nothing of what just happened and started painting. The next morning I went on a run to my high school that was about 3 miles away. My high school is on a common road that always has cars on it. As I was nearing the school, I heard a car pull up behind me. I stopped running and turned around to see a beat up car with the windows rolled down. A smiling man was sitting in the driver's seat. He looked to me in his mid to late 20s and he had a fairly handsome face. Hi. I probably had a confused look on my face as I didn't recognize the man, but I knew his voice from somewhere. Xavier, we met the other night. Oh, hi, sorry, I didn't recognize you. It's fine. Hey, you're pretty far from home. That's quite a long run. Aren't you tired? I can give you a ride home if you'd like. Oh no, it's fine. I like running. Thanks for the offer though. Want to go out for a cup of coffee? No thanks, I don't drink coffee. We don't have to get coffee then. I'll pay for you. Come on, I want to go get something with you. No thanks, I'm not really interested. Oh come on, let's go. Hop in. He reaches over to open the passenger door and beckons me to come in. At this point, it's clear that I don't want to go and I step off from the grass and back onto the sidewalk. I said no, sorry. Come on, just get in the car. It's not a big deal. I gotta go. Some friends are expecting me. That's when I fall and sprint to the school's track and called a friend to pick me up. While waiting at the track for my friend to pick me up, Xavier's beat up car goes down the road, away from the direction of my neighborhood. Few bad things happened in my city, so I didn't think much of what happened and shook it off, which was stupid of me to do. A couple of days later there was a neighborhood barbecue. Although my parents weren't home, I didn't mind going to the barbecue alone because it's always a blast. I hung out with my neighborhood friends like I usually do. I saw the Millers and had a friendly conversation with them, which soon turned to, oh, I met Xavier the other night. The Millers didn't know who I was talking about. They said they didn't know an Xavier, no family member moved in with them. I told them about what happened at the school the other day while I was on my run. The Millers and I are freaking out about now. They call over one of our neighbors who's a cop, we'll call him John. John lives a couple houses down from me. I tell him about the confrontations I had with the guy and what he looked like. He told me to call him or the cops if I didn't feel safe or if I encountered the guy again. John patrolled around our neighborhood for a few weeks. Neighbors kept a lookout for Xavier and didn't let their children out late. There was no sign of Xavier for 2 weeks. I got back from a friend's house late at night. I pulled into the garage and went inside, turned on the lights, and I was making something to eat. Then there was a soft knock on the front door. It was late. I got back from a friend's and my guard was down, so I walked across my house like I usually do. From the front door, you can hear footsteps if someone is walking to the door normally and not trying to hide their steps. I thought it was just a friend. I looked through the peephole and saw a wide smile that belonged to Xavier. He was at my door, late at night, and he had a large backpack with him. He heard my footsteps and I could hear him say, "I'm sorry about last time. I didn't mean to be like that, Lainey. It was just a bad day," through the door. I wanted him to go away. I meant to yell, "Get away from me," through the closed door, but all that came out was a lame whimper. I just came to apologize. Open the door. I don't mean any harm. He tries to wiggle the doorknob. His voice in constant pestering gets louder and louder. At this point, I'm freaking out and I couldn't think at all. I couldn't remember where I put my phone. My family doesn't have a house phone either. Xavier began pounding on the door and repeatedly pushing on the doorbell and kept repeating, "Open the door, Lainey. Open the door. They're waiting for us." My dog heard the ringing of the doorbell. I don't think he heard the soft knock because he was upstairs somewhere, but when my dog hears the doorbell, he's always excited to go look out the front window and see who's standing on the porch. If it's someone he recognizes, he'll just stand there quietly looking at them until one of us opens the door. When it's someone he doesn't recognize, he barks. He's a German Shepherd and his aggressive bark is very loud. My dog comes running down the stairs, looks at the window, and he doesn't recognize Xavier, so he starts barking at him from the window. Xavier laughs and I hear him say, "They never told me you had a dog. You're smarter than they said you were, Laney." With my dog barking, I guess I snapped back into my senses. I realized I left my phone in my car in the garage. I called the cops and John. By the time they got here, Xavier was gone. I gave a description to them and they drove around the area for an hour looking for the guy, but they never found him. I stayed at a relative's house for a couple of days until my parents got back and we changed all the locks in the house and installed a security system along with floodlights. My parents had me on lockdown. John patrols around the neighborhood for a while after his shift ends every night now. Xavier, let's not meet again. I'm from the middle of nowhere, born and raised, which can get awfully boring. In order to shave off boredom in my particular little corner of nowhere, my friends and I often enjoy something called contra dancing, which is basically New England folk dancing, where one pairs off with a different, random partner at each dance. This hobby would bring us to all corners of the area and in contact with lots of interesting and usually older people. One night, a friend and I had driven about 40 minutes into the woods to this old townhouse. It's an incredibly scenic little area. Even at night, great view of the stars, crickets chirping, people dancing in the tiny town hall. A perfect hot summer night with friends and about 60 others. Again, mostly old town folk. I had even made cookies for everyone to enjoy, which was announced at the beginning of the dance and was applauded by everyone there. I had danced maybe 2 dances when an older man in his mid-60s approached me for a dance. This was far from unusual. In fact, most of my dance partners were over 40. I had seen this guy at several contra dances, so he definitely wasn't new. This guy came off kinda creepy though. Most of the older guys struck 18-year-old me as grandfatherly, but some just are uncomfortable to be close to. I refused him, saying I promised my friend a dance. He insisted that I dance the dance after with him. Not wanting to be rude, I agreed, trying to be as perky as possible so he didn't know he was making me uncomfortable. "You look so beautiful tonight," was the first thing out of his mouth when we paired up for the dance. I kind of just smiled and nodded. I didn't want to be encouraging. He was sweaty, had a walrus mustache, and was bald except for a crown of gray hair. The dance was a particular extravagant one, with a move called a gypsy, when the partners staring into each other's eyes while circling around each other into a swing. He started making remarks under his breath during this move, such as, "Get over here," and "Can't get away from me," while pulling me closer. Gross, but nothing too bad. "I heard you made the cookies. They were delicious. I'll have to get the recipe out of you, or just make you my wife. Then I have them all to myself." I almost stopped the dance to get away from him, but I shut down and refused eye contact and conversation. I was sufficiently grossed out, but it was nothing too bad. I pulled my friend aside after and told her about him, and then enjoyed the rest of my night. After summer dances, the young people often drive down to a small pond and swim to get off the sweat and grossness of the dance. Skinny dipping is encouraged, as this spot is really in the middle of nowhere, no houses around, and an absolute amazing view of the stars. My friend and I spent about 20 minutes hanging out in the water, with people slowly leaving until we were the only ones left. That's what I thought at least. Until I saw a figure standing at the bank of the pond staring out at us. I didn't call out, assuming it was one of our friends. I swam closer, starting to get out of the water. It wasn't until I was actually fully out of the water, clothed only in a t-shirt and underwear, that I recognized the old man from before. A lurch of fear and wrongness I felt in that moment I will never forget. I have never seen anyone above the age of 25 go down to the pond with us, and he was fully clothed and not there for a swim. He also wasn't saying anything. "Shannon, we have to go now," I yelled back at her. The pond bank was narrow and it was hard to scramble around him. I was pretending I couldn't see him, that he wasn't there, or that I didn't care he was there. Shannon was about 20 feet behind me when he turned to follow me back to the cars. The rocks were painful to walk on and made it hard to move quickly. "I heard you guys were coming down here," he said. At this point, Shannon was just coming near him. She did not recognize him from earlier stories. It wasn't reacting to the creepiness as strongly as I was. "Haha, yeah, sometimes we cool off down here," Shannon replied. He got between me and her, blocking her from the car. "You know, you and your friend look like sisters. I heard she made the cookies. Do you cook as well as her? I'd love a pair of you at home." This is when the situation really hits Shannon. We're alone, with this guy who's apparently followed us to the middle of nowhere, with unknown intentions. "It was nice talking to you, but we have to go now. Come on, Shannon." I was practically running to the car, throwing the words over my shoulders. He put a hand on Shannon's bare shoulder, which spurred her after me. "Come on, you two. I'm just trying to have some fun." I was already in reverse by the time Shannon got in the car with me. We tore out of the dirt road at about 50 miles per hour. It hit pavement at around 70. I almost puked when I saw headlights turn out from the road, following us. Since I was about 40 minutes from home through all the back roads, I took a gamble and headed towards the nearest gas station, followed the whole way. We stopped at the station, right in front of those huge windows in front. He slowed down, looked at us, and then sped away. I haven't seen him at a Contra dance since, which is the scariest thing to me, as he used to be a regular. In my experience, Contra dancers are a loyal bunch, but this guy just sort of drifted in for a couple months and disappeared just as quickly. Still makes me uncomfortable to think about. Alright, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed these stories. If you did, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. But as always,
Have a nice day.